I had stage 3 cancer. At 28, my family was too busy with my brother's wedding to visit once, not one time in 36 sessions. 2 years later, Dad called crying, he needs a caregiver. I gave him back his exact words. My father said it while I was standing in a hospital hallway in a paper gown that kept slipping off my left shoulder. I had just come from the oncologist's office. Sarah Brennan, 12 years in oncology, the kind of doctor who delivers hard news by sitting down first and making sure you're sitting too, had shown me the scan results on a monitor and used the words stage 3 and moderately aggressive and we need to start treatment soon. And then she had given me a box of tissues and the name of the infusion center and a packet of information I hadn't been able to read yet because my hands were shaking too much to hold paper. I had walked to the hallway because I needed to call someone. I called my father because he is my father. That is the only logic that applied in that moment. Your father is the person you call when the world has just done something to you that you don't know how to hold. He picked up on the second ring. I told him. I said the words stage 3 cancer in a hospital hallway while a nurse walked past me with a chart and an orderly pushed an empty wheelchair toward an elevator and the fluorescent lights hummed above me with absolute indifference. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, your brother is planning his wedding. We can't take this on right now. Then he hung up. I stood in the hallway for a while with my phone in my hand. The paper gown slipped off my shoulder again. I put it back. Then I walked back to the oncologist's office and asked the receptionist what the parking validation process was. And she told me. And I validated my parking and I drove home. My name is Camille Atwood. I am 30 years old as I write this. 2 years ago, I was 28, working remotely as a UX designer for a software company in Denver, living alone in an apartment I liked, running 3 mornings a week, generally under the impression that I was healthy. The lump had been there for approximately 8 months before I had it checked. I noticed it in the shower, told myself it was nothing, told myself it again 6 weeks later, and finally made an appointment in September because a coworker mentioned offhandedly that she'd had something similar checked, and it had turned out to be nothing, and the peace of mind was worth the copay. It was not nothing. Dr. Sarah Brennan, Garrett Cancer Center, board certified in medical oncology, the woman who would oversee the next 6 months of my life, sat across from me on a Tuesday morning and explained what the biopsy results showed. Stage 3 breast cancer. The tumor had involved lymph nodes. The recommended treatment was 6 months of chemotherapy, followed by surgery, then radiation. 6 months. I was 28 years old. I have one sibling, my brother Derek, 33, who was at that point approximately 4 months into planning a wedding to a woman named Megan, whose primary contribution to my understanding of her was that she had opinions about centerpieces that she expressed at significant length. My parents, Richard and Carol Atwood, had been deeply involved in the wedding planning in the way parents get involved when a son is getting married, which is to say, completely. I had been calling home less frequently that year, not because anything specific had changed, but because when I called, the conversation was usually about the wedding, the venue, the rehearsal dinner location, the guest list, the centerpieces. I had started finding reasons to keep the calls short. I should have noted this pattern more carefully. I called my father because I thought a cancer diagnosis would constitute an exception to the pattern. He said, we can't take this on right now, and hung up. I drove myself to the first chemotherapy session on a Thursday morning in October. The infusion center was on the 3rd floor of the Garrett Cancer Center. I had been there once before for a pre-treatment consultation, and I had noted then the particular atmosphere of the place. Not grim exactly, but specific in the way of somewhere that deals in serious things and has organized itself around that seriousness. Recliners in a row, a nurse's station in the center, a window along the south wall that let in afternoon light. The nurse who brought me to my chair was named Rita Flores. She had a name badge and had been in oncology nursing for 14 years. She looked around the infusion room as she settled my IV line, and then looked at me with the specific practiced neutrality of someone who notices things and has learned to mention them gently. Most people bring someone with them, she said. I looked at the room. Chair 3 had a husband holding his wife's hand, not speaking, just holding, his thumb moving in small circles on her knuckles. Chair 5 had a mother reading Harry Potter aloud, her voice steady and slightly theatrical, her daughter with closed eyes and a small smile. Chair 9 had an elderly man whose daughter was unpacking a container of homemade soup, and the smell of it reached me from across the room, chicken and something herbal. The smell of someone who had woken up early to make something for a person they loved. Chair 7 had me. My work laptop was in my bag because I had a deadline on Friday, and I had told my project manager I'd have something to him by end of week. That is what I had brought. I'm fine, I said. Rita looked at me for a moment longer than the sentence required. Then she went back to her station. That night, when I was home and the anti-nausea medication had not yet decided whether it was going to work, I texted my mother, starting chemo today. I'm scared. She replied 6 hours later. I was on the bathroom floor when the notification came. Not dramatically, just the specific unglamorous position you end up in when nausea wins, sitting with my back against the bathtub and my knees pulled up and my phone in my lap because I had been waiting for it to light up. Hang in there, sweetie. Mom's at the florist with Megan picking centerpieces. Peonies or roses? What do you think? I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, roses are nice. I did not tell her I'd been dry heaving for 40 minutes. I did not tell her I was on the bathroom floor. I put the phone down. I had started a folder on my phone 2 weeks earlier, after the conversation with my father in the hospital hallway. I had told myself myself it was because of chemo brain. I had read about cognitive effects from chemotherapy, and I was terrified of losing track of things, and this was partly true. But some other part of me, the part that is always quietly doing the accounting, had already understood that I was going to need a record. I opened the folder, I screenshotted the text exchange, added it to the folder, went back to the bathroom floor. The folder grew slowly over the following months, one screenshot at a time, the way you document things when you keep hoping the next entry will be the last one. A call log from November, 17 calls to my mother, 9 answered. A text from my father in December, responding to a message I had sent about the medical bills. We just finished paying for Derek's wedding. We don't have extra. Have you looked into a personal loan? Your credit should be good enough. I had applied for the loan the following week. $47,000 at 14% interest. The specific cruelty of a number that means you are paying for your own survival at a premium because you did not have anyone to help you absorb the cost. My oncologist notes from round 3, which I had requested and kept. Patient presence without support person. Noted for social work referral. The social work referral had led to a single phone session with a hospital social worker named Janet Kowalski, licensed clinical social worker, 8 years in oncology support, who had asked me questions about my support system and listened to my answers with the careful expression of someone who has heard this before and has learned not to show on their face what they think about it. Would you like me to reach out to your family on your behalf? Janet had asked. Sometimes it helps if the information comes from a medical professional. No, I said. Thank you. I added Janet's contact information to my folder. The wedding photos appeared on Facebook in February, while I was recovering from round 4. I had lost 17 pounds by that point. My hair had gone in the second month, not all at once, but gradually, then suddenly, the way these things go, until one morning I looked in the bathroom mirror and made the decision to shave the rest, rather than watch it leave in increments. I had a scarf I wore on most days, and a beanie I wore when I was too tired to manage the scarf. I was in the beanie, under a blanket on my couch, when I opened Facebook, my mother's post. A photograph of the family at the reception, my father in his good suit, my mother in the dress she'd shown me a photo of 3 months earlier, Derek and Megan at the center, everyone arranged and smiling. The caption, the happiest day of our family's life. I was not in the photograph. I had been asked formally not to attend. My father had called 2 weeks before the wedding. Camille, we think it's best if you don't come. You look unwell. You've lost weight. Your hair. A pause that had lasted 2 full seconds. A pause I had measured because I was on my couch counting things. It's Derek's special day. We don't want anything to overshadow it. Anything. Meaning me. Meaning my bald head and my 17 missing pounds and the visible evidence that something was happening to me that nobody wanted to see at a wedding. I had said okay. I had gotten off the phone and I had sat with the specific quiet devastation of someone who has just been told that their illness is an inconvenience to other people's aesthetics. I screenshotted the Facebook post, added it to the folder, closed Facebook, did not open it again for 6 months. The worst night was after round 4. I had been warned that rounds 4 through 6 would be harder than the first 3. My oncologist, Dr. Brennan, had been precise and honest about this, the way she was precise and honest about everything, which I had come to understand was her specific form of respect for her patients. Round 4 is usually when the cumulative effect becomes most pronounced. If you have someone you can call, this is the stretch to have them available. I did not have someone available. At 2:14 a.m., I called my mother. The phone rang 8 times. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called a 3rd time. On the 4th call at 2:31 a.m., she picked up, but it wasn't my mother. It was the voicemail again. I had miscounted my calls, my chemo brain doing exactly what I had been afraid of, and I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and left a voicemail that I cannot fully remember the content of, except that it involved the word scared at least twice. She called back at 10:23 a.m. Sweetie, you called last night. I had my phone on silent. A pause that had a particular texture to it. Not apologetic exactly, more explanatory. The pause of someone providing context rather than acknowledging harm. Megan and I were at the spa, host-wedding stress relief. Another pause. What did you need? I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Bald patches where the scarf had shifted in the night. Hollowed cheeks. The particular grayish undertone of skin that is being worked on by something from the inside. Nothing, Mom, I said. It was nothing. I added the call log to the folder. 36 chemotherapy sessions. Over 6 months. 17 pounds lost and then found and then lost again. A surgery, radiation, 0 visitors. The hospital kept a visitor log. I had not thought to request it at the time. I had not been thinking clearly about documentation during active treatment, only instinctively, reaching for my phone to screenshot things because some part of me knew the folder was necessary without fully understanding why. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I requested the log later, after everything else happened, and the column where visitor names were recorded showed the same entry for every session, none. I was declared cancer-free in March. Dr. Brennan told me in her office, the same office where she had told me the opposite 2 years earlier, and she sat across from me with a different expression. Not the careful, measured expression of bad news delivery, but something warmer, more allowed. The scans were clean, no evidence of disease. She used the phrase, excellent response to treatment, and shook my hand. I drove home. I sat in my apartment and I thought, I survived. I thought about it for a while. Then I ordered Thai food and watched 3 episodes of a nature documentary and went to bed at 9 o'clock because I was as I had been for 2 years, very tired. My parents did not know I was in remission. I had not called them with scan results since the second month of treatment, when my father had responded to a scan update with "That's good news, keep us posted," and I had understood that keeping them posted was a transaction that cost more than it returned. They did not know if I had survived. My father called on a Sunday afternoon in April. He was crying. I had never heard my father cry. In 30 years of being his daughter, I had not once heard him produce that sound. The specific, broken quality of a man who has discovered that he is not exempt from the things he believed happened to other people. It stopped me. He had Parkinson's disease. Early stage, diagnosed 2 weeks earlier. He was frightened. He wanted his family around him. He was calling a family dinner for the following Sunday to discuss the future. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask if I was in remission. He did not ask if I had survived. I said I would come to dinner. Then I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. I opened the folder. I had not looked at it in several months, had not needed to, had been focused on recovery, had been trying to live forward rather than backward. I scrolled through it now with the systematic attention of someone reviewing a document before an important meeting. The call logs, the texts, the loan paperwork, the Facebook screenshot, the visitor log with its column of none. 23 calls to my mother. She had answered twice. I closed the folder. I texted my therapist, Dr. Miriam Ose, clinical psychologist, whom I had been seeing for 14 months and who had helped me understand, over those 14 months, the difference between forgiveness as a feeling and forgiveness as a logistical decision about your own future. Family dinner Sunday. Father has Parkinson's. They want me to caretake. Can we do a session before? She replied within the hour. Friday at 10. You know what you need. Trust it. Sunday dinner. The Atwood family home in the suburb where I had grown up. A house I had left at 18 and returned to for holidays and obligatory occasions, and which had never, in the years since, felt like a place I could fully exhale. Crystal chandelier in the dining room. The good china, which came out for occasions my father deemed significant. Family photographs along the hallway. I counted them as I walked in. 14 frames, stopping at my 18th birthday, the year I left for college, as if the documentary record of my existence had concluded when I became no longer a minor dependent. My father sat at the head of the table. He looked smaller than I remembered. The Parkinson's tremor was visible in his right hand, a fine movement he was managing by pressing it flat against the tablecloth when he wasn't eating. He had aged in the 2 years since I had last sat at this table. We all had, but his aging had the particular quality of someone who has received news that has updated their understanding of their own timeline. He said my name with the specific warmth of a man who has decided that the occasion calls for warmth and has deployed it accordingly. Camille, you look well. He had not seen me in 2 years. He did not know what I had looked like for most of those 2 years. Derek sat across from me. His wife Megan was beside him, her hand on her stomach. She was pregnant, which I had learned from a Facebook post 3 months earlier, which was how I learned most things about my family. Derek had the expression of a man who has been briefed on the agenda and is ready to proceed. My mother was at the other end of the table. She looked at me when I sat down with the expression of someone who wants to say something and is deciding whether the timing is right. The timing was not right. Dinner was served. I ate. My father talked about the diagnosis, about the progression timeline his neurologist had outlined, about what he would need as the disease advanced. Someone available, someone nearby, someone who could manage appointments and medications and the logistics of increasing care needs. He turned to me. Camille, you're the obvious choice. He said it the way he says things he has decided, declaratively, with the confidence of a man who has made decisions for other people his entire life and rarely encountered resistance. You work from home. You don't have a family of your own. It's time you came back and contributed. Contributed. Derek nodded at his plate. It makes sense, Cam. I've got the baby coming. Megan needs me. Megan looked at the table. I looked at my father. His trembling hand was pressed flat against the tablecloth. He was looking at me with the expectation of someone who has asked a reasonable question and is waiting for the reasonable answer. I let the table settle into quiet. Then I reached into my purse. Before I answer, I said, I want to ask you something. My father blinked. He is not a man who gets asked questions at his own table. The blink was the visible recalibration of someone encountering an unexpected variable. Do you know if I'm still in remission? I said. Do you know what my last scan showed? Silence. Dad, I kept my voice level. I had stage 3 cancer. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy. I lost my hair. I lost 17 pounds. I had surgery and 6 weeks of radiation. I paid $47,000 out of pocket for treatment because when I asked for help, you told me to look into a personal loan. My mother's lips parted. I placed my phone on the mahogany table, opened the folder. Here is where I texted you my chemotherapy schedule in October. I turned the screen so the table could see it. The text, the timestamp, the absence of a response. Here is your reply when I told you about the medical bills. I scrolled his text in its entirety. We just finished paying for Derek's wedding. Have Have you looked into a personal loan? Derek had gone the color of old putty. Here is the call log from November through January. 17 calls, 9 answered. I did not editorialize. I let the column speak. And here, I opened the hospital visitor log. I had printed it and photographed it, kept it in the folder for a year without knowing exactly why. Columns of dates. The column where visitor names were recorded. None, 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 none. 36 chemotherapy sessions, I said. 0 visitors. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Megan had pushed back slightly from the table. The unconscious physical response of someone who wants to not be in the room and cannot find a way out. My father stared at the screen. His trembling hand pressed harder against the tablecloth. Something moved across his face that I did not have a name for. Not shame, exactly, or not only that. Something more complicated. The expression of a man looking at a record of his own behavior laid out in columns and timestamps. This is the past, he said. His voice had a quality I did not recognize. What's done is done. I need a caregiver now. You're my daughter. I stood up. I smoothed my blouse. Not for effect, just the automatic straightening of someone finishing something. I picked up my phone. I looked at my father, the frightened man at the head of the table with the trembling hand. My father, who had hung up on me in a hospital hallway, who had sent his daughter to chemotherapy alone, who had called her an inconvenience at his son's wedding, who had suggested a personal loan for cancer treatment, who was now, 2 years later, sitting at the head of his table under a crystal chandelier, asking the daughter he had left in chair 7 to come back and take care of him. I looked at him for a moment, then I smiled, not bitter, not performing, just clear. The specific clarity of someone who has made a decision and has arrived at it without anger, which is the only kind of decision you can make and mean. I hear you, Dad, I said. I paused. I can't deal with this right now. His face broke, not dramatically, quietly, the way a face breaks when it receives something it deserves and recognizes it. 4 words, his words. The words he had said to me in a hospital hallway 2 years earlier, when I was standing in a paper gown and holding a packet of information I couldn't read because my hands were shaking, returned exactly as delivered, with the same calm, with the same finality. I walked out past the family photographs that stopped at my 18th birthday, past the crystal chandelier, past my mother who had risen from her chair and reached for my arm. I felt her fingers brush my sleeve, and I kept walking. The front door closed behind me. I sat in my car in the driveway for a moment. Not the 3 minutes I had sat in the parking lot of the hospital the night of the diagnosis, counting the quiet. Just a moment. Long enough to confirm that what I felt was what I thought I felt, which was not triumph and not grief. It was the thing Dr. Osei had been helping me find for 14 months, completion. I started the car. 3 months later, my father's neurologist is a man named Dr. James Park, who has been treating movement disorders for 20 years. My father is his patient, and I am not involved in his care. Derek and Megan have arranged for a part-time aide, a woman named Gloria, apparently, who comes 3 mornings a week. My mother has taken on the coordination role that falls to spouses in these situations. They are managing. I know this from 2 sources. The first is my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, who has been quietly keeping me informed with the specific loyalty of a woman who loves her brother and also has a clear-eyed view of him and has spent 2 years being uncomfortable with what she knows. She calls once a month. She does not ask me to reconsider. The second source is Derek, who texted me in May. I know I didn't handle things right. I'm sorry. 5 words. I read them several times. Then I typed back, "Thank you for saying that. We have not spoken since. That may change. I am not foreclosing it. My last scan was 8 weeks ago. Clean. No evidence of disease." Dr. Brennan shook my hand again, and this time I noticed that her handshake is firm in the specific way of someone who means it. I go running 3 mornings a week, the same route I ran before, which felt different for a while after treatment, and now feels like mine again. I make my own coffee in the morning and drink it at my desk by the window while the city wakes up outside. And this is ordinary, and it is mine, and I did not take it for granted before, and I take it even less for granted now. The folder is still on my phone. I have not deleted it. I don't look at it anymore. It is just there, the way some things are just there, not needed daily, not causing harm, simply present as a record of what happened and what it cost, and what I did with the cost. 36 sessions, 0 visitors. 2 years later, cancer-free. And for the first time in 30 years, I was the one who got to leave.